think people are quick to consider themselves as brands and think that they can just brand themselves, and that the default is, well, this is the brand. You don't really get to decide what the brand is. You don't get to decide what the brand is. The customer decides. Yeah, so we hear this buzzword a lot nowadays. Everybody talks about, branding, brand. That term wasn't as popular even 5 or 10 years ago as it is now, but like everybody's like talking about it, classifying themselves as it, personal branding, corporate branding, you name it, branding. I'm a student of this particular craft. I love studying marketing, design, brand identity, brand development. And I go back to terminology. I'm always trying to understand what something is, what it means, the definition, and then derive from that principles and strategies and things around that I can build upon. And so this is a book that I read many years ago. It's called The Brand Gap. This is a pretty good read. It's kind of one of the staples. He's written, the guy who wrote this book, his name is Marty Niemeyer. He's written a couple of books that are like staples in the whole design and brand community. This is one of the books that I love. It's called The Brand Gap. It's how to bridge the distance between business strategy and design. And he really goes in and unpacks sort of what branding is, what is a brand. He talks about how to think about branding, the different gaps that exist with branding, and how you can basically align your brand in the marketplace through strategy. One of the things that he says in here, and this is really on the first page, he gets into this whole introduction of what a brand isn't. And there are people that talk about this too in other videos. And it's I think by now, if you don't know, you should know that a brand is not a logo. So when you think of a logo, you see a logo, when you see the Chick-fil-A logo, I know everybody knows the Apple logo. A logo in and of itself, he describes that a logo is a logotype. It's a design speak. It's a trademark made from a custom lettered word. Logos is Greek for the word word. The term logo caught on with people because it sounds cool, but what people really mean is they're talking about a trademark, whether that trademark is a symbol, a monogram, an emblem, a graphic visual. That's the visual that you see is the logo. So a brand is not the logo. A brand is also, he also says, is not the actual product or the service. These are aspects of a brand. The definition that he uses for a brand, which is kind of similar to the type of way that I think about it, is that a brand is a person's gut feeling about a product, service, or company. He says it's a gut feeling because we're all emotional, intuitive beings, despite our best efforts to be rational. It's a person's gut feeling because in the end, the brand is defined by individuals, not by the company, not by the markets or so-called general public. Each person creates his or her own version of it. So here's a simple example of this. I always think about ants. I got this when I was a little kid. I actually had I was outside playing and I slipped and fell. I had on these little short ass shorts. Well, my legs all out. It's summertime. I'm running around in my grandma's yard and I slipped and fell in a ant bed. And it doesn't take long. I slipped and fell, and I thought I was getting up quick. And as soon as I stood up, there were ants covering my leg. And within seconds, it's like fire shot up in my bones. I felt bites in hundreds of places all over my legs. I'm laying here beating these things off, and I started crying. And I looked down, and my leg was fire red. And within a matter of minutes, my leg swelled up from all these bumps. And I run in the house, and my grandma, we had to put alcohol on my legs. And it just took a minute because it was pain I had never felt before. At that moment, ants were branded for me. I knew from that day on, never ever run or play around an ant bed. Matter of fact, don't be outside. I almost decided not even wear shorts anymore. I'm not even going outside in shorts because if this is what ants will do to you, ain't no telling what else can bite me with shorts. So I probably didn't wear shorts for a while. I don't know. But at that moment, ants became a brand for me. My version of what an ant was, I had a new definition for ants and how to engage them. So an ant isn't walking around thinking of themselves as a brand. They're not doing anything to be a brand. They are based on my perception. And so he defines it, a brand, as a person's gut feeling about you. And so that's what a brand is. Now, branding, on the other hand, is this is a company's ability to shape that gut feeling. That's what branding is. Branding is your proactive efforts towards shaping that perception and that gut feeling. So by default, you are a brand. Anytime a person interacts with you as a person, interacts with anything you're doing, that person's response and reaction and gut feeling about that is that brand. It is that perception. So brand is also correlated with the word perception. Whatever is perceived is the brand at that moment in time. Branding is the cultivating and shaping of that. So branding has become an entire field of study. It in and of itself is it's an approach to business. The intentionality around how you shape and mold the perception in the eye of the consumer is that art form. And that's what we do as an agency here at Fourth Park. So I run this marketing and branding agency called Fourth Park. We've been 11 years in the game. And what we specialize in, one of the things we specialize in, is brand strategy, brand identity, brand development. These terms, like I said, they get thrown around like, oh, brand, everybody's talking about it. But the type of intelligence required to shape and mold a perception, one, it takes time, it takes testing, and it takes a whole lot of intentionality around understanding the customer's experience of you, of your business. That then becomes the true rubric of whether or not we're branding correctly. Like, how do we even know we're branding properly? Are we achieving the right perception? Are we achieving the right gut feeling, for this particular brand or service? So I want to throw that out there. I think people are quick to consider themselves as brands and think that they can just brand themselves, and that the default is, this is the brand. You don't really get to decide what the brand is. You don't get to decide what the brand is. The customer decides. Your job is to try your best to mold that perception into a perception that you desire and hope that the customer perceives it that way. So it is a never-ending pendulum, because 1 minute your brand is amazing, and then you do some crazy shit like Balenciaga did with, one of their outfits, or the Gap is done, or I think H&M had some crazy stuff. Like, these brands, you love them, and 1 minute you in the middle of cancel culture because people are like, what? We're done with you. The brand can swing through culture, depending on what era we're in, depending on what's happening in society. Your brand can be perceived one way and it can change. Another very obvious example, like Donald Trump. You go back in the early 2000s, Donald Trump was heralded and respected in hip hop culture. All the rappers talked about Donald, wanted to hang with him. He was somebody of high regard, this billionaire guy. He was cool, the apprentice guy. Oh my God, Donald Trump, Trump. The brand was the brand was hot. His time in presidency, coming up to presidency, seeing the things he was saying, the tweets he was posting, Black culture shifted. That paradigm shifted. The pendulum swung in a whole different direction. Same person, but that perception changed. Because whatever he was doing with his branding, it wasn't working in this side of culture. So branding is always moving. It's an ever-flowing spirit animal in the eyes and minds of your customer. And your job as the business owner, or your job as an entrepreneur or the creative, is to shape and mold that perception, to be as intentional as you can. You could even think about like branding as like parenting. You can't make a child do anything. Well, at some point when they're little, you can kind of like, pop them on the butt to get them to do whatever. But at some point, you can't force how a child perceives something. You can't necessarily control it. Your job is to steward, create an environment, and best you can mold that perception in hopes that they will perceive. That parenting is branding. Parenting is branding. That's a new idea. Parenting is branding. And that ability to shape that perception and that lens is what parenting is all about, in hopes that the child will perceive things the way that you desire them to perceive. And if they do and if they don't, we'll let you know how well you brand it. It will let you know how well you market it, and it'll let you know how well you position it yourself. So that's what I would say. I think you should check out this book. It's a really good book to look into if you're thinking about your brand, if you're trying to figure out how to brand, if you're trying to understand this whole methodology. If you're looking for an agency to work with on something like this, this is what we do here at Fourth Park. We're a branding and marketing agency. We got over a 10-year track record in this field with what we do with clients, and we're helping them align their branding, marketing, design, and media efforts. So definitely check us out there. And if you're watching this, I would love to know what your thoughts are in regards to branding. Do you have a different definition? Maybe your perspective on it might be a little different. Or just give me some thoughts around what you think about branding today in general. How do you feel about the idea of brands and branding and culture? Is it oversaturated? Are we abusing the term? Do you feel like there are some great examples of branding that you've seen? You may even want to highlight some of those examples in the comment. Just want to see what that dialogue opens up to. If you could, hit the like button. Also hit the subscribe button. We love you to subscribe to our channel. We talk about things like this all the time. We got a lot of content that we're putting out. Also share this video. Let anybody you know who may be interested in this term. You've been hearing people use this term. You got a friend that's always talking about brand. Is like, you don't even know what the hell that is. Tell them to check out this video. Maybe they'll get some education around this. Also shoot a book to them like this. It's some good insight. Once again, I'm Antoine, and you're watching Fourth Park.